Welcome adventurers to a brand new ShawnSetGO video. Today we're going to be talking about the capital cities within World of Warcraft. This came up from a Reddit post that says which capitals have the biggest need of a revamp. Now, before we jump into the video, I wanted to tell you thank you so much for the support on recent videos. I appreciate it. Of course, if you're liking this video, give it a like at any point during the video. You can also subscribe to the page. We have been streaming regularly at twitch.tv/ShawnSetGo as well, doing a little bit of variety as well as WoW content. So let's jump into this. Post says, I always felt that Echo Isles would have been better off with dedicated mini capital instead of being almost entirely a starting zone. Don't get me wrong, I cried for Zuni. And conclusion of the Sea Witch story from Warcraft 3 was satisfying, but I don't like that it came at the cost of most of the archipelago. So I thought it best to, before we jump into the video, sort of the B-roll of some of the cities, let's look a little bit at the comments. First one says, Silverman down to the Ghostlands needs to join the rest of Azeroth and get patched into current specs. I actually didn't know this, but it says right here, yes, yeah, you can see that even in game, if you are an Outland and a group member is in one of the Blood Elf areas, you can see the mini map. The arrow points to east. If it would be on Azeroth, the arrow would be pointing, would be missing until you're in Eastern Kingdoms. Same happens, of course, in Darnassus and Kalimdor. And the reason for that is because whenever you're in those areas, you are technically in like not lore, but in the game you're in Outland. So that's why you have to take a portal to get to those locations. So Qualdanus is the exact same reasoning. Is that it's you're technically in Outland whenever you're there. So in that case it's a Shattrath portal, but it's just a strange game thing, I suppose, since it was added during the Burning Crusade. So it's kind of a weird ad there. People need a reason to actually visit the capital cities besides Oregon, Stormwind, and Dalaran because of the Legion Hearthstone. All they would need to do is add the same servers and portals to the cities, which the capital they want to hang around. I kind of agree and disagree with that idea. I think that when the capital city of the expansion is bad, people typically don't want to hang around that area, but will flock towards their default. And usually for most people, it's Stormwind or Org. Those are like the most defaults for most people because it's a good universal location, not just for portals, but you're going to find the majority of people hanging out in those zones because usually it's of a majority opinion when a city is just not a good city place to hang out. And now discussing more of which cities need a revamp, I think you have to stay away from the OG cities a bit because most of them they've been that way for so long. I don't think fixing them would make people flock towards them, even if it was just like, say, like an HD remake. One of the biggest examples, and I'm not a big Alliance player, but I have played Alliance characters, is the Exodar. I mean, the fact that it's still kind of just in a state of disrepair, and we didn't really get the whole like Lightforged Draenei look of what it could potentially look like, or just no like really conveniences after all this time, is a perfect sign of I don't think if you fixed it, people would care for it. Just because we're kind of way past that, at least at this stage in WoW. So I don't know if that would be like the fix for it. Darnassus, people are pretty burned out from the state of it. Stop. Absolutely stop. All of them, please. We're expecting Silvermoon and Azure Mist revamps, but I'd love the modernization of them and the revamped Plaguelands. Echo Isle, Silvermoon, the Exodar could all use a revamp, and Darnassus is kind of smoky. Stop. Absolutely stop. I always mention this in videos, but I think that the allied races locations aren't necessarily all bad, but I think cities that are supposed to house those allied races should be integrated into the main major cities to have sections that make sense, in the sense that like if you're going to have Stormwind host mechanomes, having that have like a district there or a section there, it makes sense. Same thing with Org hosting Magar Orcs or Thunderbolts hosting High Mountain Tauren. That to me is the most logical way of kind of integrating those things so people can experience them beyond just their expansion and doing like the storylines, or if you're doing the allied race quests. To me, that's like an easy integration. That's not a full-on remake, but sort of the Stormwind makeover. Because if we're talking about makeovers, I think Stormwind got an amazing makeover ultimately, whereas Org's kind of, to me, was a downgrade. I think old Org was way better than current Org. I might get some disagreements on that, but I think the new Org, it's a lot more war like facing, and that I get that idea, but primarily with it being a major capital city, I think it still has to have all of the features that, you know, you're hosting. This is also auction housing and merchants, and for some people where they live, you know, and having none of those things and kind of leaning towards the war things. It was like already there, and it kind of leaned towards being really less appealing to me. I don't know why, but for me, it just kind of downgraded. I think it might be because I'm just used to the old way, but that's just my personal thoughts on it. So we're gonna roll through a few of these at any given point, just kind of talk a little bit about them as it's rolling through. I might skip around here a bit, but I don't want to put this on like a quick, like fast playthrough here. So like I said, Stormwind, I think, has a really great look. Really, I don't have any notes. I think it has a good mix of being a place that has places you can sit in quiet and peace, and then lore bits as well. And it has a good amount of still being reminiscent of the old expansions, you know, with, like, for example, the train and the transport to Ironforge, as well as still being relevant even in the newer expansions. Orgrimmar, we talked about this. I mean, like the whole war facing, I know it doesn't seem like, if you played Horde, you're like, oh well, it's not super different in the sense that it didn't change. Like, you're not going up in the into zones that you never been before. It's mostly to accommodate maybe like portal rooms and to accommodate transmog and other things like that. There's like, you're still going to the same areas potentially. I would just say, like, to me, the upgrades just, they became more of like, oh yeah, it's here and not here, as opposed to something else. I will say the transport from Org made a lot more sense when I was playing Horde more. And now with the Stormwind portal room, I like it better. Even though Org has a portal room, I just like Stormwind's and where there's a setup better. Ironforge, honestly, like kind of like one of those zones that I think that will always be really fantastic. I would say, like, maybe the worst thing is that it does feel somewhat empty, but I think it's still one of my favorite ones just because there is so much interesting decor and stylized, like the way it looks is just, it's perfect for the races that live there. So that to me makes the most sense. Undercity is kind of one of those zones that either love it or hate it. I think a lot of people like the circular formation of it. I personally never really liked it for that. The quarters, you can go to the wrong quarter super duper easy. Maybe the auction house is the easiest part, but I mean, the elevator system, obviously, if you play hardcore, you're aware of it. Tracking around things and finding things has always been a pain. I would say it still has one of the best thematic looks. Perfect for undead. It really just makes a whole bunch of sense. Gnomer, I mean, if we're thinking about Gnomer and the home of gnomes, I don't think there's a version of this where it becomes like a decent city to be in. It would be interesting to see what they could do with it, especially since now we're getting the goblin update. So with that being the case, it would be interesting to see, but I don't see it happening anytime soon. Maybe something that's inspired by this, but in the zone itself, like, I don't know about that, if it really needs it. Thunderbluff, one of those things where, once again, I'm going to say that the elevators are annoying, the spacing and the placement is annoying, but at the same time, it's still very much theirs. I don't know what inspired necessarily, or the lore behind what made a zone like this exist so high up, other than maybe for like defensive purposes and whatnot. But for cows, essentially wanting to live so high up on the ground, high up off the ground, it's kind of like antithetical, but then they throw all the tents in there. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, it's very inspired. It's very good. Now, Gilneas, one of those zones that I think, unfortunately, it is very, like, we got to see again with Kol Tiran, where it's perfect. Everything is like great. It's beautifully done, but I don't know if we'll ever get to see anything beyond what we've already seen. I think it's kind of, it was like one of those set it and forget it things that just kind of never changed again. And that's kind of the unfortunate part about it. I will say though, I would accept either, because I've said before with the allied races, how they would maybe mix into cities. I would accept guild like a Worgen city on its own, like a standalone. That would be cool. So far I would say that maybe Gnomes and Worgen could use like their own, maybe like either remake or sort of integration, but definitely those two could be a standalone for sure. Silvermoon, I think it's beautiful. It's very, very empty. Even when things were popular, people wanted to go to Undercity instead. And it's a shame because it's very beautiful. I think the design is, maybe could use an HD remake. I think Isle of Quel Danas is one of people's favorite memories, and these the sort of architecture and the beauty of it, I don't think has been done again since. So that's one of my favorite things. And going back to classic, I mean, with Darnassus, I think that there are really beautiful areas here. If you've ever navigated it before, say in classic, you would know that the locations of things are a bit confusing because everything kind of looks super similar. I imagine you would get used to it at some point. It's just a little difficult to navigate when all like the buildings look exactly the same, and it's hard to kind of like differentiate. I would say like this one has a lot of like really key points. I just don't like traveling. I didn't like traveling to it, going to it. It's always a pain, and it's even worse now. So it's just one of those things with Darnassus that even though it already got a remake, it doesn't really feel like we did. So beautiful, absolutely beautiful with Suramar here. I think is one of the, like, to me, it's one of those things that I missed as a player fully experiencing, but insanely good as far as design, look, questing was tons of fun within this area. So much variety and interest there. I would say the only thing that compares maybe is with Dragonflight, with how much you could do in the area. Exodar, one of those kind of things that it worked thematically during the expansion and we didn't really see anything afterwards. I would say it would be nice if Draenei got a version of this that just kind of, if we're gonna phase things out, you know, phase something in where it's actually interesting and actually fixed up or something like that would be decent. So I would love to see something along those lines, because we haven't seen something for them in a while. Bilgewater, it's one of those things that I think that not a lot of people used. To me, I wasn't a fan of navigating this. It seems like it should, like from the top to the bottom, you should be able to navigate and be able to visibly see things. It's not that. That's not the case. It is difficult to navigate a place like this. We're gonna see this in Undermine though. So I mean, you don't get two. You can have one. So you don't get another. Oralis, one of those areas that I think that is multifaceted, fantastically themed. It's a bustling city, has tons of interesting things. My biggest gripe is that it is somewhat difficult to navigate in the same regard. You don't have to navigate the whole thing. That's not what I'm saying. It's just that it is difficult to navigate if you're just trying to go, oh, like, let's go to this area. Like it's kind of sort of the same, or it looks very similar to maybe other fantasy type games. I might have some disagreements with other people on this, but Dazar'alor, it's really just like it's two areas. There's two areas that you're going to go to, and the rest of it is kind of moot. It's too big for its own good, and I get what they were going for. I think they succeeded in making it look, you know, like big and isolated and whatnot, but it's just too big for anything. And I think, to me, more than going for like this like Mayan look, this Aztec type look, I don't know if that's the right culture there. I apologize, but I think that Trolls, to me, Valley of Spirits was more I would hope for. maybe just to an upgraded degree than what they went for here. So to me, this didn't match like what I thought it should look like. I'm not saying like everything has to be sticks and sticks and stones like the orcs, but I was thinking about something a little bit more to that, and this just didn't match to me. So I wouldn't hope for something like this. Shattrath, this is of course the Draenor edition. Did we already go to the new Shattrath? Okay, there it is, an outline. Okay, so honestly, I think this was always meant to be sort of a just nostalgia bit. I think this of course is much better than Outland's version. I think if you like Outland's version, it's just nostalgia. Of course, it's all busted, and most people are like refugees where they're standing. It's all in disrepair. I think that what we probably wanted in Outland is for it to look like this by the end. You know, see that progression in the expansion, and then seeing it later, I just don't think it had that same effect. So more than anything, it would be nice to see this version be like sort of ported in nowadays, but we don't get to pick and choose, I suppose. So it is what it is. Maybe just phasing in some of those if you just choose to. Maybe when housing comes in, it'll be more interesting to do. Dalaran, a lot of people might disagree with this as far as enjoying this. I think this is one of the best ones as far as condensing what needs to go where. Easy to navigate, has tons of it, and has a dungeon in it, and like the arenas, the sewers are insanely good, especially back in the PvP days that I used to have back in the Lich King. Portals were great. Of course, heirloom gear and accessing like vendors and stuff like that was great. Professions and stuff like that was great. It was good all around. And honestly, I will tip the hat to WoW in that they match the lore to what's happening in the War Within with the city. To me, it did give off the aura of basically the best and the brightest are here, and they're doing all the things, very much like a Rapture sort of isolation, BioShock for those of you who don't know, and it gives the idea of it being this place that's only accessible to the elites. It's not meant to be a cozy place for homes. It's meant to be a place that the greatest minds can have a space to perform their work. So that it gave off the correct vibes. And it to me, no notes, fantastic place. Do I hope they make a new Dalaran? It'd be kind of cool. So maybe I would say it's one of those zones. It's like I know we're on the expansion where it would make sense for them to remake it. So maybe. And then Heimdall. I mean, I think it's one of those things that it's would have been great if we got them as, you know, playable characters as well. So I mean, I'm not going to rule it out. I think that it's well made, but I think until that's a possibility, then I think we have to kind of accept that this will just kind of be a distant memory, unfortunately. But a lot of great cities. Honestly, I did not expect at the beginning of this that I would pick Alliance cities to be the ones to get the remakes, considering that Stormwind is one of the best, if not best, for what a capital city, like a major city, should look like, for a hub for multiple races. It just makes a lot of sense, and it just huge connections there. I think that if I'm going on the Horde side, I would say I think Thunderbluff deserves some love. We've had a lot of changes to Orgrimmar, and I think a lot of people are used to that. But it would be interesting on the Horde side to see what Tauren / Trolls could come up with, because I think both of those deserve maybe sort of their own bit there that hasn't really been done before. So kind of a balance between either Draenei or Gnomes getting something, or Tauren and Trolls getting something. That would be kind of my decision between those two. So, but of course, it's not all about me. Let me know in the comments, which cities do you think need a remake, a redo, or a movement so we can do it again? And then what do you think we should do about these kind of dead cities to kind of reinvigorate them? Because we've had cities either remade or introduced in expansions, and maybe they're useful in expansions, but sometimes they just kind of get introduced and then people don't really care to stand in them. So what do you think should be done to these capital cities to make them more important and more used as these hubs? Do you think there should be essentially like Classic used to have, like meeting stones, essentially, or something important that you have to go to that location for, or maybe make them zones for people who are hunting transmog or old achievements, etc., where it's like it's still those hubs that are important. So let me know. Of course, if you like the video, give it a like, subscribe to the page while you're at it. But of course, until next time, catch you in the next one. Peace.